If you've ever been called too emotional or too sensitive, this story is for you. Make sure to subscribe because this one might just change how you see yourself. Clara was a wife, a mother, a caretaker, always showing up for everyone but herself. She was taught that emotions made you weak, and for years she believed that. She silenced her needs, buried her feelings, and wore strength like a mask. But inside, she was unraveling. Until one day, something shifted. A moment, a breakdown, or maybe a quiet realization that she couldn't keep surviving like this. And that's where her real journey began. Not into a new life, but into her emotional self, a self she had locked away. In a world where emotions were seen as a weakness, Clara found herself constantly battling against the tide of her own feelings. As a wife and mother of two young children, she had always been taught to suppress her emotions and put on a brave face, no matter what challenges came her way. But deep down, Clara knew that there was a part of herself she was neglecting, her emotional self. She had learned from an early age that showing vulnerability invited judgment. Too needy, they called her, overly sensitive. Over time, she grew adept at hiding her true feelings behind a carefully crafted mask of composure. But the more she suppressed her emotions, the more they threatened to consume her from within. It was as if a storm raged beneath her, desperate to be acknowledged, yet constantly denied. One evening, after a particularly difficult day, Clara sat by the window, staring at the horizon. Her husband David was away on a work trip, and her children were fast asleep. The house was silent, but within her, emotions clamored for release. A tear slipped down her cheek, followed by another, until she was sobbing into her hands. She didn't understand why, but she felt as if something inside her was breaking open, raw and unfiltered, and then the world shifted. A strange sensation coursed through Clara's body as if her very essence was being pulled elsewhere. The air around her thickened, shimmering like a mirage, and before she could react, she was no longer in her home. Instead, she stood in a vast ethereal landscape unlike anything she had ever seen. Towering trees with glowing blue leaves swayed in a wind that did not touch her skin. Rivers shimmered like liquid silver, winding through the land like veins of living light. The sky was an endless expanse of shifting colors, ever changing like a mood in motion. Clara's breath caught in her throat. This place felt both foreign and deeply familiar. Welcome, a voice whispered. Clara spun around to find a figure standing before her. It was a woman, or at least it resembled one. Its form shifted fluidly, its colors fluctuating between deep reds of anger, soft blues of sadness, and golden hues of joy. Who are you? Clara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I am you, the figure replied. I am your emotional self. As she ventured deeper into this strange world, Clara realized that emotions were not just felt. Here, they were alive. Love manifested as radiant creatures with wings of light, fluttering through the air like fireflies. Despair took the form of dark, shifting mist that clung to the ground, threatening to pull her under. Anger roared through the skies as tempestuous storms, and joy danced across fields of golden flowers. Each emotion presented a challenge, When Clara encountered the sorrowful mists, they whispered painful memories, pulling her into moments she had tried to forget. She saw herself as a child, crying alone in her room after being scolded for crying too much. She saw herself at her father's funeral, biting her tongue to keep from sobbing because she was told to stay strong. You must face them, her emotional self urged. Only then can you move forward. Clara hesitated. She had spent her entire life running from emotions like these. But now, in this world where there was no running, with a deep breath, she stepped forward, allowing the sorrow to wash over her. The memories ached, but instead of burying them, she acknowledged them. And as she did, the mist began to dissipate. With each trial, Clara grew stronger. She learned that anger, when harnessed, became a force of protection rather than destruction. That love, when nurtured, expanded beyond herself. That fear, when confronted, lost its hold over her. As she embraced these lessons, the world around her changed. The storms calmed, the rivers glowed brighter, and even the despairing mists transformed into gentle fog, guiding rather than hindering. Then came the final test. A towering figure, dark as the void, loomed before her. It had no face, no form, only an immense, crushing presence. Clara knew instinctively what it was. The sum of all the emotions she had ever suppressed. It did not speak, but its meaning was clear. You fear me, I will consume you. Clara's heart pounded. For years she had feared this part of herself, but now, standing before it, she made a choice. I see you, she whispered. You are part of me and I will not fear you anymore. The darkness shuddered, then dissolved into wind. Clara awoke in her home, sitting by the window where she had started. The tears had dried, but something inside her had changed. She no longer felt broken. She felt whole. In the days that followed, Clara carried her newfound understanding into her life. She no longer dismissed her emotions as weaknesses, nor did she allow them to rule her. Instead, she listened to them, learned from them, and let them guide her in a way she never had before. Her relationships deepened. She allowed herself to be vulnerable with David, sharing her fears and dreams without shame. She taught her children that emotions were not to be silenced, but understood. And for the first time, Clara felt truly, completely alive. She had ventured into the depths of her own soul and emerged transformed. In a world that shunned emotions, she had discovered their power, and she would never suppress them again. Days turned into weeks, and Clara found herself adjusting to a new way of being. Her emotional self was no longer a distant, mysterious force, but a constant companion. Whispering guidance through the ebb and flow of life, she could feel the changes in her. From the way she spoke to the way she embraced both joy and sorrow with equal reverence. One evening, as she tucked her children into bed, her daughter, Lily, looked up at her with curious eyes. "Mummy, why do you look different?" she asked. Clara smiled, brushing a strand of hair from Lily's forehead. "Because I've learned something important," she said. "That feelings aren't scary. They're just part of who we are." Lily nodded as if she understood. and nestled into her pillow. Clara kissed her forehead and turned off the light, her heart full. One afternoon, as she walked through town, Clara noticed a woman sitting alone on a park bench, staring blankly into the distance. Something about the woman's posture, a quiet tension in her shoulders, the way she gripped her hands, reminded Clara of herself before her transformation. She hesitated before sitting beside her. "Are you okay?" Clara asked gently. The woman turned to her, startled. I don't know," she admitted. "I feel like I'm drowning, but I don't know why. I keep telling myself to be strong, but it just hurts." Clara reached out, placing a reassuring hand on her arm. "I used to feel the same way. For years, I thought emotions were my enemy, but they aren't. They're a part of us. Ignoring them only makes them stronger." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "How did you learn to listen?" Clara took a deep breath. "I had to face them, and it changed everything." Word of Clara's journey began to spread. Friends, neighbors, even strangers sought her out. Drawn to the quiet confidence she exuded, she began to listen more, to share her story with those who needed it. In time, she started a small support group, a safe space where people could express themselves without fear. What had once felt like a burden was now a calling. Clara knew that if she had struggled for so long, countless others must be struggling too. And if she could help even one person step out of the darkness, it was worth it. Her husband, David, noticed the change as well. "You're glowing," he told her one evening, wrapping an arm around her as they watched the sunset. "You've found something special." Clara smiled. "I think I have." Though she had come so far, Clara knew her journey was not over. Emotions would continue to rise and fall like tides, but she no longer feared their arrival. Instead, she welcomed them, ready to embrace whatever lessons they had to offer. As she stood at the window that night, looking at the horizon, she felt a sense of peace she had never known. She had spent so much of her life believing emotions were a weakness, but now she saw them for what they truly were: a source of strength, wisdom, and profound beauty, and she would never turn away from them again. Clara's support group grew, drawing people from all walks of life. One evening, a man named Elias, an elderly psychologist with a kind demeanor and piercing blue eyes, attended one of the meetings. He listened intently, nodding at the stories shared, but he said little. After the session, he approached Clara. "You have a gift," he said. "You see people, not just their words." Clara tilted her head, intrigued. "I just listen." Elias chuckled. "No, you do more than that. You understand. Have you ever considered refining your skills, helping more people beyond this group?" Clara hesitated. "I don't have formal training. I'm not a therapist." "Neither am I," Elias admitted. "I once was, but now I guide those who have the heart to heal others. If you're willing, I can teach you." Elias introduced Clara to deeper concepts of emotional intelligence. He taught her about active listening, nonverbal cues, and how to help others unlock their own inner voices. He introduced meditation and mindfulness, showing her how to remain centered even when others' pain threatened to overwhelm her. Through him, Clara met others, each with their own emotional battles. There was Maria, a former teacher struggling with grief, and Jonah, a young man who had never learned to express anger without aggression. Slowly, Clara learned to guide them, not by giving advice, but by leading them to their own answers. In return, she felt herself growing stronger. Each session, each conversation was another step in her own journey. One night, Elias gave her a task. You've helped so many, but have you helped yourself? Clara frowned. What do you mean? He handed her a journal. Write a letter to your younger self. Speak to the girl who was told to be strong when she needed to cry. Forgive her for thinking emotions were a burden. Tell her what you've learned. Clara's hands trembled as she took the journal. That night, she sat by the window and wrote for hours. As the words poured out, she felt old wounds reopen. But this time, she faced them. She forgave herself. With newfound clarity, Clara expanded her reach. She began workshops on emotional intelligence, teaching children and adults alike the importance of embracing their emotions. Schools invited her to speak, and companies sought her guidance on workplace empathy. One afternoon, the woman from the park bench, Emily, came to see her. You saved me that day, she confessed. I want to help others like you helped me. Clara took her hands. Then let's do it together, she said. Years later, Clara stood before a packed auditorium. She was no longer just a woman struggling with emotions. She was a leader, a guide, a beacon of hope for those still trapped in their silence. Emotions are not weaknesses, she said. They are our greatest strengths, and the moment we stop fearing them, we begin to truly live. As the audience erupted in applause, Clara smiled. Her journey would never be over, but now she walked it with purpose, surrounded by those she had helped and those who had helped her. She had found her calling, and she would never turn away from it again. Clara didn't just find herself, she found a mission to help other women like her, especially the ones still pretending they're fine, even the hardened, difficult ones who flinch at softness, because she knows now. Healing doesn't make you weak. It makes you powerful, and the world needs more women who've come home to themselves. If this story moved something in you, don't leave without liking the video and subscribing. There's a Clara in all of us, and you deserve to hear stories that remind you you are not alone.